Hello, everyone. Welcome to Books and Chit Chat with Aging and Amazing and all authors. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. I know that you have many other important things that you could be doing right now, so we really appreciate that you came by. My name's Mary Ann Shuko. I am a co-founder and manager of All's Authors, and we are the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. And I'd like to introduce some of the members of our team who are with us today, starting with Christy Byrne-Yates, who is the author of Building a Legacy of Love, Thriving in the Sandwich Generation. She is my podcast co-host and producer and co-moderator for this event. So hi, Christy.
Hi, everybody. I'm always excited for a good books and chit chat.
And also Malika Moore, who is the founder of Aging and Amazing, which strives to support older adults, caregivers, and the networks that surround them with resources and community. So hello, Malika.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad. I look forward to this every month. So.
Yeah, this is great. And we also have Flory Munat and Ruth Stevens. And I thought I saw somebody else.
Sue Fagaldi-Lick.
Oh, Sue Fagaldi-Lick and Susan Landis, who is a member of the management team. And Susan is the one who does all the beautiful artwork that you see on our social media and on our website. And she's an acquisitions editor and does the custom caregiver collections. Ruth is also an acquisitions editor. This event is being recorded. We post it to our YouTube channel and our podcast. So if you want to catch the replay or share it with someone, friends, somebody you know who needs to hear these stories, we encourage you to please share. You can find the podcast on all the major podcast sites like Apple and Spotify, and also on our website, allsauthors.com. We announce everything in our weekly newsletter, so you can subscribe to that at the allsauthors.com website and be among the first to know everything about All's Authors, new books, events, book club, all kinds of stuff. We got a lot going on. I think we're ready, so let's get started. Tonight, we are honored to have the very lovely Vicki Tapia with us tonight to discuss her book, Somebody Stole My Iron, a family memoir of dementia. Vicki is one of the three founders of All's Authors, along with Jean Lee and I, who met each other. We met each other serendipitously online in 2015. All of us wondering, now that I've published my book, what do I do with it? So luckily, we don't know what it was, what driving force brought us together, but we found each other and decided to work together to help promote each other's work. And we've been doing it ever since. And Vicki is a huge part of it. And we love her. She serves as in a variety of roles. She's on the board. She's our treasurer. She does acquisitions. She's a proofreader and the steady hand that keeps us on course when we chase after shiny ideas and concepts that may not serve us well. So welcome, Vicki.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
So good to see you. Vicki hails from Montana. And I come from New York. So we really represent like all across the United States here. And we have many, many authors outside the United States, Canada, the UK, Europe. So we really
Australia,
are global.
Yeah.
Australia. I think we're on
Israel.
somebody from every continent except for Antarctica. So Vicki, let's get started. We'll talk about you and your book. I know you have a lot to tell us because your story is unusual. I remember when Jean was the first person I met that had to care for two parents with dementia at the same time. And then she introduced me to Vicki, who also had the same journey. And then, hard to believe, but of the 5 members on our management team, 3 of them have cared for 2 parents with dementia at the same time. And the third one is Christy. So when people hear that, they go, oh my God. So Vicki, can you tell us a little bit about your dementia journey?
I didn't even know I was on a dementia journey in the beginning. It always kind of boggles my mind how we normalize things as many things in life. My dad had Parkinson's disease, and I don't even remember when I was diagnosed, but he started to have short-term memory loss and was diagnosed as having Parkinson's related dementia. And this is back in the early 2000s, and I don't know if it was dementia or more Lewy body. It's hard to know. Lewy body wasn't as well recognized then. I don't think everything was kind of, at that time, I think people thought dementia and Alzheimer's were two different things, and people would often be surprised when you'd say Alzheimer's is just the type of dementia. It's, not separate from dementia. In any case, my mom was the in-home caregiver for him, and he got up a lot. She was getting up a lot. I don't know if she was getting 3 hours of sleep or 4 hours of sleep. If it's true that you can be more prone to develop Alzheimer's as an older person because of poor sleeping habits and depression and everything my mom was going through. The next thing that happened within a year was my mom was diagnosed with moderate Alzheimer's disease, which really, really rocked my boat. I was like, how did it get to moderate? I didn't even know she had mild. But then I started thinking back about some of the strange things that had happened over the last few years. And I had to admit to myself, I had normalized something that was absolutely not normal. So at that time, I began my campaign for them. They lived about 2 hours east of me. I began campaigning for them to move to where I lived, a much bigger city. I mean, 10 times bigger city. And there would be better healthcare, better everything, right? And their daughter would be nearby. And my mom was, no, I'm not moving. I've lived here all my life. I'm not moving. And then my dad was trying to get up from his chair where he spent most of his time, and he fell on top of my mom as she was trying to help him up. And she called me the next day and she said, guess what I did? I put your dad in respite care for 10 days. And I said, what? And she told me what had happened. So I kind of amped up my idea of maybe we should like move you here closer. Nope. Because now she's all alone in a condo unit by herself. My dad, who was supposed to be more safe where he was, within a couple months had fallen in the nursing home area and broken his hip. So next we had to contend with that. There was no way I was going to be able to get them to move right at that point. As winter set in, winter in Montana can be a little harsh. And one day my mom called me and she said, I'm ready to move. She was trying to do all the shoveling and clear the driveways and the sidewalks in front of this condo. And you don't know, I just wanted to tear my hair out. I had called her many times, not many, but at least 2 or 3 times a day to be sure she was okay, because something could happen and no one would know. They're alone. But she did agree to move. And so we went down and started doing some preliminary packing. And I said, Mom, this is dumb. Why don't you get, these things, all this stuff packed before we come back? It'll make it much easier next weekend when we come to move you. And still not recognizing what someone with dementia can or can't do, right? We got there the next weekend to pack them up, and she had this big box in the middle of her living room, and I looked in it, and there was like a little statue of a bird, and there was a book, and there was like I don't know, really random articles just kind of on covering the bottom of the box. And I looked at that and I was like, what is this? You were supposed to get packed. And yeah, well, anyway, only one of the many mistakes that I made in how I interacted with her in the beginning, because I had no idea how I was supposed to, the best way to converse with someone with Alzheimer's. So they moved up to where I live in Billings, and I thought things would go more smoothly. And I guess they did in a way. My dad and mom were supposed to be in a 2-bedroom assisted living, but once they saw my dad and evaluated him, they took him directly to the memory care unit. And my mom was pretty devastated by that. But really, in the end, it was a good thing because it allowed her to be able to get better sleep. What doesn't look like it'll be good sometimes turns out to be good. And so then we struggled along for the next several years. And funny things happened along the way. Tragic things happened. I cried, I laughed. My mom fired me on more than one occasion from taking care of them. And we eventually had to move them to a more not in nursing, what do we call these? More care up besides what comes after assisted living.
Memory
Well, just a
care?
more, yeah,
Well, it wasn't really memory care. It was just people that need more help and
yeah,
can't do their own pills anymore.
yeah.
So it was called the Tender Nest, which it really was. It was a beautiful place. But my mom was so mad at me that I stayed in her apartment to load things up, and my husband graciously moved them into their new living space. And on one of his trips beside, where she's pouting, she said, "You can tell your wife that she doesn't need to come visit me here." So he passed that along, and I was like, "Oh, good, I could use a break." I don't want to admit that, but anyway, a couple of days later, she called and she said, "Why haven't you been out here to see me? It's been 50 days since she came." That was one of her favorite lines. "It's been 50 days since you came to see me." So I was back in the groove of visiting her. She did. Oh my goodness, she would go down and spend the day with my dad in the memory care. This was before I moved them, and I'm not doing this in order, but things pop into my head that I think I'll share. She liked to shave him, but she would just, with the electric razor, she would shave and she would shave. I could always tell when she'd been at it because his face would just be kind of red at the time. She called me one day and she said, "They are so mean here. They took my shaver away from me and threw it at the wall and broke it." What? What kind of caregiver would do that? So I said, "Mom, I'll be out there this afternoon. I'll see what I can figure out." Okay. So when I got out there and I started chatting with the CNAs and the caregivers, and they were like, "Yeah, did you look at your dad?" So I looked at him. She'd shaved his eyebrows off. Not only had she shaved his face, and they said we tried to take the razor, the shaver away from her, and she got mad and twisted it away, and she threw it against the wall and broke it. So there's always two sides to every story, right? I chose to believe their side in that case. Oh, one day she said, "Well, I was down visiting your dad, and I got to spend time with his son." I said, "What? I have a brother, but was not involved, and he was nowhere near." It's like, "My brother came? What?" So when I came out there, and she took me down, and she said, "See, there's the son." And one of the CMAs had a baby. It was a Native American one, right? And my dad's holding this little Native American baby, and I'm like, "No, I'm sorry, Mom, that's not that's not Dad's son." Not that she ever believed me, but just another one of those little incidences of I'm sure you could all tell me stories that are much like this one. And I don't know, I can keep going on and on with stories, but I'll let Marianne ask another question.
So how did you come to put your book together, and what made you decide? I know there's a very
Okay.
dramatic story about you deciding to publish your story.
Well, I am a journaler. I've kept journals. If I opened up a drawer over here behind me, I have this big drawer that I started when I was 16, writing things down. It helps me. I'm kind of an only child. My only sibling's 15 years older than I am. So he left home before I have memory. So to me, I'm an only child. So it helped me to write things down and just sort through life. And it's just one of those things I felt like it was a comfort to me to write. So when I started caring for my parents, when they were both diagnosed, I started just at the end of the day, some days were longer than others, as you know, as caregivers. I would just type on my keyboard the things that had happened and transpired. And the more I typed, the more stories came back to me, like when my mom got a computer and what happened. And a few years, amazing that I remembered these conversations and what had happened. And
Okay, so you managed
oh,
to
when
put
I
it
was
all in
writing,
a
so
book form.
yeah, I after about a year of doing that, I realized that I was writing a book. It wasn't just a journal; it was a book. And I also knew that I had looked high and low for a book that would be meaningful to me as I went on my journey, something that would tell me, "You will live through this," and that just shared what another caregiver experienced. It was in the early 2000s, very difficult to find those types of books. There's the 36-hour day, there's caregiver books written by doctors. I mean, but I wanted to buy a person that I could relate to. And so I think it was about a year into it, I thought, I think I am writing a book. So I kept writing, and I kept journaling. And, my parents passed away in 2008. My mom passed away, and my dad passed away a year and a day later in 2009, which is really odd. At that point, I thought, well, what am I going to do with this? And I felt that it wasn't something I didn't want to, it was very private. Did I want to put my family's private journey struggles out there for the world? And so I put it away. But I put it away for 3 years in my drawer, on my hard drive. I guess it wasn't in the drawer, but I had friends whose parents had also developed dementia and that knew I had been doing this, and they just said, "Well, just let us read it," So 3 different friends read it, and all 3 came back and said, "I think this might help other people." So I thought, really? So at that point, I decided, oh, what have I got to lose other than our family's privacy? So I started looking for a publisher, and that took about a year. And my book was picked up, and then it took another year before it was published. Was that the dramatic story, Maria?
Yeah, because you had so much inner turmoil.
And also, I figured if my brother read it, he'd never speak to me again. But he hadn't spoken to me for a few years by that time, anyway. So what was one more thing? So yeah.
Did he ever read it? Do
did.
you know?
I don't think so, because he probably would have yelled at me or something. No, I don't think so. His 2 daughters did.
How did
Go
they?
ahead.
How did your niece or nephew? I don't know. Did you say
2 nieces.
How did they respond?
Positively.
Yeah, you gave them some context and history to their grandparents.
Hmm. Yeah, I did. I like to go back and put it all together, I guess, so that it maybe makes more sense, and you understand what. I just think it gives you a greater understanding of what the journey can be like in any relationship, parents, husbands, whatever.
So what was it like with the 2 of them together with dementia? Because usually in most situations, if there are 2 living parents, you're helping the one that is the primary caregiver. So you're kind of on a team, but when it's the 2 of them, it's like us against the world.
Well, and yeah, exactly. And that was another hard thing for me. That I could only unload all my troubles onto my husband and my kids or my friends so often. So that was another life-saving thing about being able to journal.
Just trying to navigate dementia with both the parents. And
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
my dad was pretty docile, and he was confined. After he broke his hip, he never walked up without help or a wheelchair after that. And he was very, very sweet. He was never belligerent or angry, or he was just very sweet. And he would say, he called me his aunt. And mostly I just let it go. It's fine if I'm his aunt. I don't know which aunt I was, but so he was just happy with whatever. If I wheeled him outside and we sat and talked, had funny conversations. It's like, I'd talk about my kids, and he'd go, now, and my kids are all grown and out of the house by now. And he's like, now, how old is Jill? Is she like 6? I'm like, no, she's like 20. But they were nice. My mom, on the other hand, is pretty fiery. And she continued to get after me and tell me that the food tasted awful and it was watery and sloppy and awful. Well, come to find out, she was pouring water on her plate of food. That would do it. She would always like to me. This is kind of funny too. She always wanted me to bring a pair of tweezers with me so I could pluck her eyebrows. But she also had issues with, and some of this I believe was physicians not interacting with each other. She had a psychiatrist and she had a neurologist or a primary care doctor. And we got into some problems with her medication. It was just gave her like, she'd have seizures. And I'm sure it was the medication that doctors hadn't talked in boy, that's so important if your loved one is in a care facility, that you have some interaction and to be sure that the meds are. I was naive, I guess. I don't know.
Mm.
But she would wake up in the middle of the night. She would walk into the common room where the night nurse was. Thankfully, that's all that was there. Stark naked, swearing like a soldier on a night after a night at the bar. Um, they called me one day and said, "Does your mom have pajamas?" It's like, yes, she has several sets in her dresser. Just open the drawer. But she didn't keep them on very well. She would get angry and be so upset with me. I mean, I was the sort of, what do you call it, the person some days it bothered me more than others, but I really had to kind of get over it and learn things like patience and respecting her feelings. What the big thing I learned was I could not drag her to where I was in the stream. I had to walk back to where she was in the stream and meet her where she was. I could not drag her to where I was. Impossible. I had a lot of guilt that I was doing it wrong, or that the choices I was making were not the right choices. And I stumbled around, and I had to keep repeating to myself, I'm doing the best I can with the knowledge that I have. I'm doing the best I can with the knowledge that I have. Usually that helps, but not always. It's just a difficult journey for most of us.
Vicki, Malika is asking in the chat, how did humor help you through your caregiving journey? And she notes, I like how you're able to smile and laugh, reflecting on some of the situations.
Malika. I'm not sure I found much humor at the time. It's taken me 15 years to be able to look back and feel comfortable enough to chuckle about it now. But as I was going through it, it was just really, really difficult. And let me read you. Can I read an excerpt? Would that be okay? It's just
Yes, please. That'd be wonderful.
This
Yeah.
will, I mean, this I did laugh at the time, kind of. So we'll see what you think. The title of this chapter is The Curious Occurrence of the Comet Cleanser. Mom's shoes had developed a pervasive stench. There was no other way to describe it. In hindsight, I realized it may have been related to the fact that she continuously wore the same pair of leg support knee highs. I was somehow deluded into thinking she washed them occasionally. Now I realize she probably didn't. I could have been more proactive about washing them myself, you think? But she always wore them and did not want an additional pair, as she felt the cost was too expensive. I still should have gone out and bought her a pair. I could have just bought them for my own money. When you're going through this, you're so stressed out a lot of the time, you just don't even think clearly. And then you look back and go, what was I thinking or not thinking? Okay. It would have been an excellent idea if I had bought her a second pair anyway and helped her change them each week and then wash the pair she'd been wearing. Why didn't I think of that? It now seems like a no-brainer. Perhaps I was still maneuvering through various and changing forms of denial. In any case, the next best thing was a bottle of foot odor remover. I showed her how to sprinkle some of the white powder in her shoes each morning. This really helped with the odor. It did really help with the odor, yes. One day, several weeks later, I visited her and noticed the yellow plastic bottle of Comet Cleanser I had brought to clean her sink and toilet sitting on her nightstand in her bedroom. I found this a little odd, so I asked her, Mom, why is the Comet Cleanser on your bedroom nightstand shelf? She replied, well, I am sprinkling it in my shoes every morning, just like you told me to do. She tried so hard to follow directions. My heart went out to her for trying, but at least her shoes were very clean inside and the bottoms of her feet sparkling. I replaced the appropriate bottle of foot odor remover by her bedside and brought the Comet Cleanser home with me. I am reminded of her every time I clean our toilets. My mother did not take kindly to what she considered interference with her housekeeping, because she'd always been an immaculate housekeeper, walking into her apartment and seeing her bathroom sink caked with grime and an ever-growing brown ring around the toilet bowl. was one more reminder that her brain function was deteriorating. Whenever I thought I could carefully yet unobtrusively clean the sink or toilet without her noticing, I seized the opportunity. So things like that happened. I'm sure you all have a story you could tell too.
Yeah.
Vicki, I love the title of your book, and I was wondering, did you choose the title or your publisher, or how did that come about?
I chose it. Do you know that? I'll tell you the story. Why is it called Somebody Stole My Iron? One day I was, when mom called, she called me to tell me that someone had stolen her iron out of her apartment. And I was like, why would someone steal your iron? And she had it in the bottom drawer of her dresser. So a prime place for burglars, I guess. So when I got out there and talked with the staff, nobody knew a thing about what happened to the iron. But I was convinced no one had stolen it. I thought probably one of her neighbors had borrowed it and forgotten who she borrowed it from. Or someone borrowed it, took it down to the little community laundry room and left it. So we had to, from there, go on without that iron. And somehow, as I was writing and thinking about a title, that just popped in my mind, Ruth, and no one ever tried to get me to change it. And so it's, yeah.
Was she still ironing at that point?
Maybe a little bit. I wouldn't think very much. The fact that she couldn't find it made me think she's probably still using it. If it hadn't been there for a period of time, she probably would have forgotten she had it. Yeah.
Kind of dangerous.
Kind of dangerous. Probably they shouldn't allow people to have irons in their room like that, maybe. Good point, Marianne.
But it's so typical. I've only just the little bits you've talked about your mom, but also just the losing something, or maybe, it's just misplaced, or we didn't bring it from the house, and yet it's something that comes into their head and they have to ask about it. And it is kind of it's so typical, right? That loop that someone gets into, like I lost something or somebody stole, and then the first thing is that, well, somebody stole it, because it couldn't be that I lost it.
I tend to do that myself, although it hasn't come to the point where I'm accusing people of stealing things, but it's like, no, it must have been my husband that did it. It wouldn't have been me. And then I realized it was me.
Yeah.
Funny.
One of the things I love about your book is at the end of every chapter, the life lessons bit. You put some nice things in there, and I think in the beginning you talk about how this was a book that's meant to help other people, and you shared that at the beginning of this, that it's not just your memoir of your parents. You were looking for books like this, and there weren't any, or you could have used them had they been in existence. So I think your life lessons. Can you talk a little bit about how you chose to include those and yeah.
So one of my friends that read it, his mom had dementia, had been recently diagnosed. He said to me, wow, this is a great book, but I want some specifics on how it can help me on my journey. And I thought, so that was where it was born, as far as adding the life lessons to each chapter, because as I thought about it, I thought, that's what I was looking for too. I just didn't realize and put it. Yeah. So I just went through and started writing things down that I learned along the way. Hope that helped other people, that they didn't have to struggle like I did. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
You mentioned that you lived 2 hours away from them, which was a huge factor. So can you just talk a little bit about what it was like?
Gosh, it was terrifying. I would get calls from, oh my gosh, the nursing home when mom would come out and spend the day with my dad, and they call and they go, we're a little worried about your mom. She had like 2 different earrings on today, and doesn't seem like she's changing her clothes. And the worst part is when she leaves the parking lot of the nursing home, she leaves a patch of rubber squealing out of the parking lot. And I later learned from other people that lived in our neighborhood that she would floor it going through intersections, her car. It was like, I've got to get those keys away from her before she kills somebody. I mean, how dangerous is that?
Mm.
In some ways, there were times when being 2 hours away, I could kind of forget for a little bit of time and just try to be a normal person. But then something like that would happen and it pull me right back into it. And I was like, I've got to do something. What can I do? Move her against her will and just make her come up here to live with me? It's like I tried to respect her needs and her feelings. And she was my elder. She was my mother, not try to commandeer what I thought was best. But well, and in the end, she did agree on her own. She did call me. I don't know what I would have done if that had gone on much longer, though. It had been probably 6 or 7 months since she'd been diagnosed. I don't know that she ate very much. I could not monitor anything from here.
Mm.
Driving down there to visit her a couple times. I mean, one time she said, "Can you come in the kitchen? I have something in my drawer. I don't know what to do it with it." So she took me in the kitchen and held up this utensil, and I looked at it and I was like, "Oh, wow, she doesn't. That's an egg beater, Mom." Oh, okay. What would I use it for? But so another time I had my kids with me and we came, rang the doorbell. She met us at the door with a pan of what were supposed to be cookies, but they were like little black flat things. I'm sure she had she wanted to have cookies for us when we got there, but the recipe was probably hard to follow. She maybe forgot to put in the sugar, I don't know, or the flour. So as that visit went on, I had my two college-aged children with me, and my son got the milk out of the refrigerator at lunch, and there was this green film around the top of the container. I was like, "Gee, Mom, that milk looks like it's kind of past its prime." She was like, "Well, it was okay this morning," which I highly doubt it was. But again, I just thought this can't go on. I felt like I had a huge boulder on my back. I didn't know how to get them to move without just, like I said, physically going in and saying you're moving and taking them. And maybe I should have done that sooner. We're lucky that something tragic didn't happen. So I don't encourage other people to do what I did. I needed a book that said lessons learned.
Well, I have had the pleasure of visiting you in Billings, and I know just from the short few times I've been there how huge the state is, but also how there's so many communities that are very rural. So were your parents in more of a remote area, or were they, because really Billings is one of your biggest cities,
It
and
is
that's
the
where you
biggest
were.
city. Yeah, it is the biggest.
Yeah,
And we're probably 100, close to 125, 30,000.
yeah,
By far the biggest city. Nothing.
yeah.
Where my parents were from is Mouse City. There was probably around 7,000 people there, maybe. It's not teeny
So
tiny.
yeah, not teeny tiny, but like, did they have facilities or good health? I think that being remote like that can make it very hard. We've talked on other podcasts that Marianne and I have done about, the dilemmas of people in rural areas, that it's just harder to care for a parent that's in a
Well,
rural, and then
yeah,
of course they don't want to leave. This is their home, their dream home or
yeah,
whatever, and it's
yeah.
harder. Yeah.
It is hard. I mean, she lived there 80 some years. Um, yeah, I think that her primary caregiver, the medical caregiver, was a PA because there weren't that many doctors. And it's hard to keep help. There was one nursing home where my dad was, and it's had to close in the last couple of years because they just can't get enough staff. I mean, COVID just sunk us, and for rural healthcare, it's in a terrible spot now because also the Medicaid expansion thing, the drop back or whatever, people have to re-sign up for Medicaid. People aren't re-signing up, and then people go and expect not to have to pay, so the hospitals have to eat it. And I mean, we're in a really bad place nationwide, I think, when it comes to medical care. So I don't know. I think I diverged from what you asked me.
Well, no, I was asking about the whole, if your parents were living in I sort of had the impression when you were talking that they were in a much smaller place, but it's relative, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you know, New York City or Los Angeles or even Sacramento where I live, you know, they're pretty big with, you know, multiple hospitals kinds of
Yeah.
things and stuff like that.
Well-
And so if you're a little bit more remote, it's harder.
Harder. The one thing about being in a smaller place like that is people take better care of each other.
Yes,
And
that's
that's why they
true.
were calling me and saying, "Oh, your mom, you know, something's up with your mom." And so they watch out for each other. And that part is you can't buy that. I mean, that's
Yeah, yeah.
part of being in a smaller place.
We have a couple comments here in the chat from Roseanne. She shared a story. My Alzheimer's ridden mom thought that someone stole her dental bridge and it was in her mouth.
Somebody stole my dental bridge. That's the name of a book.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
I think that's probably, oh my goodness, that makes me think of another story, but go ahead.
And Susan Landis has a question for you. How did your caregiving experience affect your kids and your relationship with your husband? Were they supportive?
Yeah. No, my kids are totally supportive, but none of them lived here, which was not helpful. Totally supportive. And they, you know, they came home on occasion. Two were in college, one was married. So, you know, I couldn't like call them and say, "I need you to come home." I couldn't do that. My husband was amazing. I mean, just the best listener. And I think I felt more inclined not to dump on him too much. I think he would have been fine probably. He's very mellow, kind of sort of opposite me. um, yeah, he's a pediatrician. He was before he retired, so he's got a good bedside manner. Very, very supportive. And we'd only been the second marriage for both of us, and we'd only been married a month, I think, when my mom was diagnosed. So just a few months before I moved in here. So that was stressful on a brand new marriage. But it was it's okay.
Yeah. And what did you do for work? Because you
What,
were not
what did I do for work?
engaged in this at all.
I was on the opposite end of life, as you know. And rather than, oh, I got a thumbs up. Yeah. As well, for the first, by the time I retired, for 30 years, I was a lactation consultant. I worked with moms and babies, helping babies breastfeed. So I kind of traded one end of life for the other. Yeah. So that gave me really an understanding of human nature and how to be tactful and to listen. It taught me how to listen. Yeah.
From Flory, we have a question. I'm wondering how the process of writing the book felt to you. Was it therapeutic? Did you learn anything new about your parents by writing their story?
Definitely. Therapeutic is the perfect word, Flory. Was it yours therapeutic for you to write your book too? Yeah. And there, Christy, you know, those of us who've been on the journey that, yes, definitely therapeutic. Did I learn anything about my parents? I think that I've learned more about my parents as I have grown older and realized, oh my gosh, my mom came and babysat my three children when she was 70 for 2 weeks so my husband and I could go to Europe. And what was I thinking? Now that I've reached that age, she raised two children separately, so she had no experience with three kids, rambunctious kids running around. I just wish I could apologize to her. Oh my gosh. So I think, I think I had some things confirmed by writing their story that my dad was just kind of there. He wasn't really involved. I don't think the disease changed him that much. He's just sort of, and my mom, her feistiness, it made me realize how terrified she must be, which isn't answering your question. But can you imagine? I mean, my dad didn't seem that aware of losing things. Maybe he did and just couldn't voice it. But my mom was so aware that she was losing her abilities to do things as she had done it. One day she called me and she said, you know, don't bring me any more papers or magazines because I don't understand them. I was like, oh, God. So I think I've just continued to learn about my parents as time has gone on. So.
Are there things that I mean, you were a professional, you were doing things in as a lactation consultant and working with people. Are there things then that you feel, looking back on your caregiving journey, that you learned about yourself, or new skills, or like you had to adapt a new way of doing certain problem solving things or managing things? Is there anything, you look back and say, wow, I sharpened my skills in this area or something like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I learned even more about being patient. I mean, doing what I did as a career, you had to be very patient, but I think I took it to a new level with my mom. And when she'd call me up and she'd say, "My daughter, she's stealing from me to travel with her husband." But she would whisper to me on the phone and talk to me like in third person. I wasn't really there. And I learned that I had to just let her unwind. I learned how, to have greater patience than I'd ever had before. And also to do my best to respect. And these are things I did in my job all the time. So maybe I just refined them a little bit more, but you have to respect the other person's feelings and desires. Kindness is probably the top of my list as far as one of the most important traits to develop as you're going through this journey. Oh gosh, if you can let go of the guilt, that's good. I already talked about that a little bit, but and letting go of the person I once knew and accepting the new person. That was a learning experience for me too. And not to have expectations. I had far too many expectations when I moved my parents here, that I was going to give my mom a bunch of vitamins and that was going to make her better. I don't know what.
Well, Susan
advice would
Landis asks, what advice would you give to a new caregiver?
Well, kind of what I just kind of went over. I would say develop your ability to be kind, your ability to respect. Learn that you cannot drag them to where you are in life. You have to walk back to where they are and meet them there. And let go of your guilt. It's not going to do anybody any good. And know you're doing the best you can with the information that you have at hand. I don't know. I just think kindness and patience are two really, and respect are three really important factors in this whole journey that we take. Maybe the unplanned journey that we take. So, and I'm going to share with you. I keep telling my two cohorts, Marianne and Chrissy, that my brain is goofy. A year ago, I was diagnosed not with dementia yet, but I have Parkinson's disease, and it's been a blow to me. So I'm further learning about relationships and letting go of things, and just life is unpredictable, and it's hard for me to even talk about it. It's not the way but I was chosen. So it's given me new insights and to growing old and having to let go of certain things, which it's easier some days than others. Try to keep my sense of humor and but something will happen. I'll go, oh no, that must mean I have dementia, and it's a little terrifying. I will tell you that if you think I didn't keep track of the question very well, but I'm not sure that isn't something that could happen to anyone. Hopefully it's not a sign I have dementia.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's very vulnerable of you to share that. And I relate and resonate because again, I was another one who had two parents with dementia. I'm like, okay, all right.
Our chances of developing it are greater.
I know.
Yeah.
So every time I forget something, I think, what? Oh my gosh. Anyway,
no, I relate to that.
Yeah, I knew you would.
Yeah, but I feel like every day I can get up and get out of bed and I'm good and I'm dressed and go exercise and life is good.
Yes. and here you are sharing, so it's really wonderful. So another question that came, there are a couple other questions. One is Dora asked about your decision to go on a trip to Egypt.
Mhm.
And was this, and then she wants you to talk a little bit about that. And was that at a time when your parents were in care?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
can you talk
they
a
were
little
in
bit
there.
then?
Yes, I
Yeah.
am. I have, I can, if I am guilty about one thing, it's the guilt that I took this trip. But my mom always said one of her favorite sayings was, life is for the living. And so I used that as my mantra, life is for the living. And everyone assured me they would be well taken care of. It was only for a couple of weeks. If something happened and one of them passed away, they they would be fine until we got back. They would cold storage, whatever they do with them. But I had extreme guilt over doing that. But we planned this for a year. My kids, it was one of those rare times when you get to take your adult children and go somewhere together. I still, it was one of the best times, vacations that I've ever had in my whole life. So was it right to do that? I don't know, but I thought people that don't live with nearby their actual parent that they're taking care of, I mean, they might not see them every day. I would assume they wouldn't see them every day if they're more than an hour away from each other. So I'm justifying it, you guys.
No, I mean, but your mother says, and I think she's had a very good point. You know, life is for the living, and we can't
Mhm,
put caregivers so often put everything on hold,
mhm.
and we can lose a lot of ourselves in that. So
And nothing, they said nothing to me when I got back. It was like life just went on, and I was like I'd been there the day before,
yeah,
they did. So I tortured myself. I probably
yeah.
didn't need to.
And then Malika notes, journaling has seemed to be a theme in our last few sessions of the book
Mm.
club. And how do you begin to consolidate and choose what to divulge? Because apparently you have a whole lot of notebooks in there, right? You've been doing this since you were 16.
This
You
is
have
such a
stories
good
to tell.
question. Oh my gosh, Malika. If you only knew. I would like to take you over there and show you. As I get older, it's the decision, do I trash this so that I mean, it's not just the Alzheimer's part. There's a lot about relationships. And I have about 5 books in that drawer, I think, that I could write, which I probably won't. And both my girls are like, no, mom, no, do not throw those journals away. We want them. We want them. And I struggle with that because, yeah, my life is not perfect. And there it's all written down. I usually tend to write in my journal when things aren't going well. So a lot of it is some of it is good stuff, but some of it is like, oh, I'm called to write when things aren't well
Excellent.
because,
Got it.
yeah, you should see what I'm writing now. It's all Parkinson's. Like, oh
Oh,
dear, I will tell you something really interesting about this though. When I was going through the whole trauma of my divorce and my parents not being well and everything that was going on, it was so stressful, and I lost my sense of smell. Today, they are pretty sure anyway, that that is a sign of somewhere down the road that you're probably going to get Parkinson's. Can you believe that? Losing your sense of smell? So one of
wow.
those. So I haven't been able to smell very well for like 25 years.
Wow. That's
That's
interesting.
that I know it's pretty wild actually. I mean, who would have thought
Gibbs said he had that, Dr.
loss
Hmm.
Gibbs.
of smell?
Hmm.
Yeah,
That was
I
his
caught
first
that.
symptom.
That was
Yeah.
my first symptom, but 25 years later, yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mm.
So, I along this theme of journaling, and I think I tend to write when I'm frustrated about something too. It's like, "Arr," this is where I get it out all on the
Hmm.
page,
Hmm.
or that something's really heavy in my head, on my heart, and I want to get it out. But
Hmm.
how would you encourage someone, some of our listeners who may be on a journey, caring for somebody with dementia or themselves have a diagnosis, to start a practice? Do you have a daily practice, or you do just write when you have something?
I just write when I have something, and it will call to me and say, write it. So I usually pay attention. I mean, there are some years during when my children were little, that I might write only once or twice a year. I put no boundaries on myself that you must write once a week or you must write once it's just purely when I have the time to do it, and something is in there that needs to get written down.
Mm. So what else have you written besides this book?
Well, funny you should ask. I just happen to have a copy. This is Maggie. This is historical biographical fiction, which sounds a little strange, biographical fiction. It's about my great grandmother and her journey. And it actually won the New Apple. It was the medalist winner a few years ago. And it's her journey from Michigan to the prairies of Montana, and a lot of bad choices. So, but it has been well received. I've been very lucky. This is my last book. It's called Harry and Grace. And this is actually my grandfather and grandmother, my dad's parents. And this picture made me want to write this book. I just loved the picture. There was no doubt in my mind from the beginning what was going to be on the cover of this book. And my dad told me lots of stories about them. And there's enough tragedy here for a soap opera, actually. So it was in me. It was like, I knew actually, Maggie, which would have been my first book, except it got hijacked by Somebody Stole My Iron. That had to be written first. And the stories were just welling up inside me, and I couldn't just journal about them. I needed to make it bigger than that. And I love writing. I do love writing. It's painful sometimes. I mean, I think it takes a lot out of us in certain ways, but nothing makes me more pleased than to sit down and just start. I don't know if I'll write another book or not, though, because I'm not sure about my disease. I don't know. We'll see. Anybody else have any questions for me? I didn't know I was going to tell you that today. Anyway.
I do. I'd like to comment back about the Egypt trip. I
Yes.
just want to say I in no way was insinuating that you should feel guilty about that. I think it was kind of inspiring to me because I felt as a caregiver for my mother-in-law, I was so self-sacrificing, which I could tell you were like the most devoted daughter. And, so you were very devoted to your mom and dad. And so that's why it just made me really think like, wow, what a great thing you did really to give that gift to your daughter and your family. So that's where I was going, like, because I know I often sacrificed my husband, or someone else because I was caring for her. So it just really it inspired me, and now I have my sister has primary progressive aphasia, and so it's a very different journey, but just kind of really made me think about the living, and the other family members, and how much we need to be attuned to them in that journey.
Yeah.
So thank you. Just wanted to
No, thank
I was
you.
going with that.
Thank you for sharing that with me, Dora. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you are still taking care of your
So
mom.
I'm not taking care. She's still able to live alone right now, but
Okay.
yeah. So
wow. Okay. Well, thank you for telling me that.
yeah. And
Oh, my AirPods are dying.
I took a vacation with my family shortly before my parents died. I didn't know they were going to die, but we had planned on this. And the one thing I did differently, it was the first time I ever bought travel insurance.
Oh, good
And
plan.
now, I mean, that would be the one tip. I'm like, just take the trip, but buy the insurance because you just don't know. But I mean, it was the same kind of thing. Like I needed to do it for my family, and I really believe my dad waited for me to come home.
It's amazing human beings do that. I
Yeah.
think it happens so often. There's something inside of us, our soul. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
But it was, we didn't go to Egypt, but it was an unforgettable trip with the four of us, my husband and our two kids, and it was, we needed it.
No regrets.
No.
I have no regrets about Egypt either. A few other things, but not Egypt.
But just get the travel insurance. That'd be my tip.
Yeah, yeah, good idea.
So
What
where
else,
can,
Marianne?
yeah,
Mhm.
where can people find you on the internet or social media? I know
They
you have a
can find
beautiful
me.
website. Hmm.
I have a website, VickiTapia.com, not hard to remember. I'm on Facebook. I do Facebook for all the authors, so I'm on there every day, almost, maybe not Sunday. And I am on X.
Mm.
I'm still getting used to saying that. X. And LinkedIn. And I do have an Instagram account, but I'm not very good about getting on there for Instagram. So the best way to get a hold of me is to email me at Vicki Tapia or All's Authors, VickiTapia.com, or visit my website and write me a note on VickiTapia.com. Yeah, I think that's the best way to get a hold of me, either on Facebook or Twitter or my website or email.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Vicki. Does anybody else have a question or comment for Vicki tonight? Okay, well, we appreciate you sharing everything with us, Vicki.
I shared everything.
Well,
There's
you
nothing
know,
left.
that's what we do. That's how we help each other,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, it is. And there's no point keeping it to myself.
Yeah.
It just took me a long time to get used to the diagnosis. So thank you everybody for coming. I'm pleased that you read my book and that you asked me questions and I got to share my journey.
Thank you. So I want to thank everybody for attending this Aging and Amazing Books and Chit Chat with All's Authors. And we would love to see you at our next book discussion on Tuesday, June 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, when we meet Mark Alderdice to discuss his memoir, Don't Forget to Dance, inspired by his journey with his wife. So if you're not already a member of Books and Chit Chat, we recommend and that you look into it and see what's going on over there. There's a lot of resources, and you can find the resources for the book club there. And you can also find it by visiting allsauthors.com and register, so to make sure that you get the link. And we also send the link out to everybody on the list anyway. So I also invite you to be among the first to know everything new with All's Authors as a subscriber to our weekly newsletter, and sign up on the website and check your inbox each week for our news, introducing our latest author, podcast, special events, and more. And be sure to visit our blog, the podcast, and our shop at allsauthors.com to find more resources for your dementia journey. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and we share a wealth of resources for the journey there as well. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony. Thank you so much for being here.